Good morning, guys, and welcome to another screencast for geography. Um, so, yesterday we looked at kind of the basics of population, and kind of like I said yesterday, we're moving into population growth today. Okay, so we're looking at how and why does population grow. As always, as you listen to this, fill out your note sheet and then submit that when you have finished. So we'll get going right away. How do we measure population? Okay, that's the first question that we're looking at. Well, we can do it by the natural increase rate, which is population growth measured as the excess live births over deaths in a year. So obviously that should make some sense to us because we want the increase. So the number of live births minus the deaths would give us the amount of increase that there is. Okay, we can also measure it using crude birth rate, which is the total number of births per year for every 1,000 people, or we can measure it by crude death rate. Okay, the total number of deaths per year for every 1,000 people. Okay, vocab is going to be big on these notes. Your quiz today is mostly a vocab quiz, so you need to make sure that you understand this vocab and um, you can you can define each word. Okay, so those are the three ways that we measure population. We look at what's the natural increase rate, how much is a population increasing, how many births are there, how many deaths are there, that sort of thing. Okay. Um, World growth. Okay, this is kind of a history of how our world population has grown since 1980. Okay, um, Asia has grown the highest at 67%. Africa has grown at about 20%. Latin America at 9, North America at 4, and Europe's population has actually been declining. Okay, so we see the biggest growth in Asia and Africa, and then it kind of goes down from there. But North America and Europe, what you would think of as some of your more developed continents, they're actually declining. Here's a map of kind of what I just talked about there. The natural increase rate is going to be highest in countries that are growing the fastest. Okay, so you can see the red here in Africa. The United States is less than 1%. You can see these countries in Europe are in the purple and the blue, which is a declining population. Okay, that's exactly what we just talked about on that previous slide. Fertility rate. Okay, total fertility rate is the average number of children a woman will have in her lifetime. Okay, we can use that to look at population growth. How many children on average does a woman in a country have? Obviously, the higher that number is, the higher the population growth will be, which is exactly what this is showing you down here at the bottom. Okay, we have in Canada and most of Europe, it's less than 2, meaning the population grows very, very slowly. And in places like Africa and Southeast Asia, we're in the 4 to 5 range, which is extremely high. Okay, so, for example, the total or the worldwide total fertility rate is 2.6, which means if you took the average number of children a woman would have in her lifetime, the average of the entire world is 2.6. It's higher in LDCs, which are less developed countries, and it is lower in MDCs, in more developed countries. Mortality, okay, that's again another statistic that we can use to measure population. Infant mortality rate is the total number of deaths among infants under 1 year for every 1,000 births. Okay, so the total number of deaths among infants under 1 year for every 1,000 births. Okay, so they look at 1,000 babies that were born and they take the total number of deaths of that 1,000 that died within 1 year, and that's your statistic. Okay, you can see there in Afghanistan it's extremely high, 119, and in places like the United States and Japan, it is much lower. Okay, much lower. And I bet if you thought about it, you could probably come up with why it might be lower. In the United States and Japan and those more developed countries versus Afghanistan and Uganda, which are generally less developed. Obviously, because the medical technology is better, which helps. infants live longer. They have more resources to be able to cure infants that are dying within 1 year, and things like that make it so that number is less. Okay, again, higher in LDCs as opposed to MDCs. It's unusually high in the United States. Okay, I know six seems pretty small, but with all the technology and resources that we have, that number should be a little bit lower. Okay, life expectancy is also a stat that people use to measure population. Okay, and that's the average number of years of a person lives. Okay, for a while in the 1940s, 50s, even the 30s, life expectancy was pretty low. It was in the 55 to 60 range, and with the increases in technology and medicine and all of those things, we've grown up to in the 79 range here in the United States. Obviously, some countries are still low because of the lack of technology and resources. But again, the United States isn't the highest life expectancy there. Japan is 84, obviously, which is bigger than 79. That 79 is very good, a very good life expectancy, but not the highest in the world. Okay. Um, so again, sub-Saharan Africa has the lowest life expectancy because of the lack of resources and technology. They are at 46 years of age on average. Okay, places like Europe are generally going to be higher. United States higher. Those sorts of things are more developed countries. All right. Um, if you look here, you can look at the infant mortality rate across the United States. This is from 2006, so it's a little bit old. But as you can see in the South, they're pretty high versus here in Minnesota, we're among the lowest um, infant mortality rates. Okay, kind of interesting just to look at. I'm not sure why the South has a bigger rate. I'm not. It could be potentially due to the higher population that's down there. Generally, the South and the East, and I guess the West too, has a higher population. Therefore, it's generally higher. But there's no clear reason why the South is more than other places. Part of this could be in 2006 from the hurricane. Okay, Hurricane Katrina. Um, but we'll move on. Okay. Why is population increasing at different rates in different countries? Okay, that's what we're going to look at next. Um, are why does population increase different in different places? Well, we've got what's called demographic transition. Okay, and that is the changes in a society's population over time. All right. And that's what we look at. That's what we want to look at. That's called demographic transition. We want to look at why a society's population changes over time. Okay. And so we need to look at what influences the birth rate of a country. Okay. What influences birth rates to go up or down is what that means. Okay. And first, we got age and sex structure of its population. Okay, if your country has an older population, the birth rate's going to be low because as people get older, they don't have as many children. Okay, so if you have an older population, your birth rate is going to be lower. Just like if you have a very male-dominated population, or more males than there are females, you're likely going to have less children. Okay, because there's less people to bear the children. All right. Um, Customs and family size expectations. Okay, that influences the birth rate of a country. Some cultures believe that in big families, and things like that, and some countries believe in or some cultures believe in smaller families, and so that influences. If you live in a place where the culture is more set on big families, the birth rate's going to be higher. If you live in a culture where the family size is expected to be smaller, your birth rate's going to be smaller. All right. Um, what else influences the birth rate of a country is population control policies. Okay. Hopefully, you've heard of the one child policy in China, and China implemented that policy. mandating that every family could only have one child because their population was growing so exponentially fast that the resources couldn't keep up with the population growth. So they instituted that policy, and you could go to jail and different things and get in trouble if you um, had more than one child. Okay, uh, scratch it. You couldn't go to jail, but you could get in trouble if you had more than one child. They would take that child away from you, and make that child a worker. That is legitimate, and so those types of things help control the population, and they affect the birth rate. When you mandate that every family can only have one child, things like that happen. Religious and political beliefs. Okay, again, this influences the birth rate. Sometimes your religion influences you to have more or less children based on what they believe. Okay, and the same with political beliefs. Okay, that can influence how many children a family has, and that influences the birth rate. All right. Okay, a problem. All right, a problem. The biggest problem with a we know that Europe and those places have a declining population, and that can be a problem. Okay, it's a problem because it creates a lack of a future workforce. If your population is declining, meaning there's more old people because the death rate is higher, um, so more people are dying off. The biggest problem there is a lack of a future workforce. Okay, and how does that impact population? Well, um, how could that impact population? Well, it can impact it in a couple different ways, right? It lowers the economy. If you don't have a good solid workforce, your economy gets worse, for sure. It creates less jobs, less growth and technological advancement because there's not as many people working to come up with ideas and create things. Okay, so it's a big problem. And the next problem we have is overpopulation. Okay, and that is where there are too many humans for the ecosystem to support. Okay, um, and so that means that the land and the resources that you have, they cannot support the amount of population that you have. Okay, and this is a problem that India faces right now. Okay, as its population rises, it creates a shortage of food. Okay, the resources can't keep up with the people eating it. Um, Overcrowding. Okay, people kind of squished on top of each other. Homes that are overcrowded, apartments that are overcrowded, buildings that are overcrowded. And then sanitation problems. Okay, when you get overcrowding, you get too many people in one area, that can lead to some big time sanitation problems, a lot of pollution, and things like that. Okay, methods of population control. Okay, methods of population control. We have economic development. All right, that controls the population. Wealthier societies spend more on education and healthcare, resulting in lower rates. Okay, so when your economy is booming, you put that money into developing new healthcare and developing more education, and so men and women both, they take advantage of that and they go get educated to get jobs, and they go um, and they have good health care, and therefore the rates are lower because when you get a job and you have an education, you're so busy with the job a lot of times people kind of put the family and having children on the back burner, and it causes lower birth rates. Okay. Another method of population control is birth control. Okay, the demand for contraceptives is greater than supply in many LDCs. Okay, obviously that controls population because it makes it harder to have children, and so that can help lower your birth rates. But in LDCs, the demand is higher than the supply, and so not everybody gets them. Okay. Um, Moving on. Okay. This is what we will look at starting tomorrow. Okay. We'll look at how do we look at population growth. So now you know all the things that go into population. And then tomorrow we'll look at how you actually see that population growth. And there's a graph called the demographic transition model that we will use to kind of look at that. Okay. So stop where you're at in your notes and we'll look at demographic transition and you'll have a worksheet tomorrow. Okay. If you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a fantastic day.